and I'm a member of the Prince William Sound Stewardship Foundation. I have been for a while, and I heard Paul mention it a couple of times, and I encourage you to go to princewilliamsound.org. It's a wonderful organization, so it's great to be a member. I encourage folks to sign up if you'd like to. And our next speaker now is waiting patiently. Jessi Massingale is with Floyd Snyder, who is contracting with Rio Tinto, doing the work out on Latouche Mine for the Beatson Mine Remediation Project. So thanks for waiting, Jessi, and take it away.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I will go ahead and share a slide deck. So bear with me for just 1 minute and hope everyone had a good lunch break there. And let me just put that into presentation mode. Is that showing up okay for everybody? All right, well, thank you. Again, we're happy to be here this afternoon and be able to just provide an overview and share this kind of great project we have here. So today I'm just going to cover the Beatson Mine Remediation Project that is located on Latouche Island. And as mentioned, I am an engineer and principal with a company, Floyd Snyder, providing support to Rio Tinto at the site. Before I dive into the agenda and project overview, we wanted to take a moment with a land acknowledgement just to recognize the traditional and ancestral homelands and the ancestors, elders, and current tribal nations that are their stewards. So to touch base on what I'll cover in the next few minutes, I want to provide an overview of the project and the site that may be new to some folks. Also, a walk through the conceptual site cleanup plan that is currently underway, overview the benefits of implementing the site cleanup, and then share our project timeline, where we've been, and look ahead to the next few years. The purpose of the Beatson Mine Remediation Project is to manage and control the sources of metal contamination that currently exist on site and release metals to the surrounding soil, surface water, and groundwater. So the photo that's shown here, you can see the orange rock in this photo. That's an example of waste rock that was generated via the historical mining operations and now functions as a source of metals to soil, surface water, and groundwater. The project is necessary because of the environmental conditions that have been impaired since the historical mining operations. And the project proponent, or the entity organization that is working on site characterization and cleanup, is Rio Tinto, through an acquisition of a portfolio of assets in 1989, became aware of and responsible for the Beatson Mine Site. So although Rio Tinto never operated on the site, they acquired this responsibility and have been working with the Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation and key stakeholders on the characterization and planning for cleanup. I think folks in the room are so knowledgeable about Prince William Sound, but to provide an orientation on the Beatson Mine Site, you'll see here that the site is located on the northwestern portion of Latouche Island. All of the access to date for field activities, different site studies that have been performed have actually come through Whittier. It's important to kind of share out some of the meaningful historical activities and site use that has occurred in the past. So first, when we refer to the Beatson Mine Site, that includes former copper mines with operations that existed from 1899 to 1930 in 3 different areas of the site, referred to as the Blackbird, Beatson, and Shaniga claims. One of the significant events that occurred post-mining that has impacted the site conditions is the 1964 earthquake and tsunami. That altered the tide lines, and it also lifted the island by about 10 feet. Also in the 60s, the surface estate was sold to a developer. And in the 60s and 70s, the remaining town site and mill structures, some of which are shown in the black and white photo on the right, were demolished by third parties. And then in 1978, the surface estate or parcels were divided up and sold to over 150 different individuals. Like I mentioned, in 1989, Rio Tinto became responsible for the Beatson mine as part of that larger asset acquisition. And then upon learning of Beatson mine and the impacts in 2014, in 2016, Rio Tinto began evaluating and analyzing the extent of contamination on site. And in the lower right photo, you can see there some of the debris piles that are present today. This photo is just a great way to show some of the topography on Latouche Island and the site in particular, as well as some of the key features. So looking at the left, in the far left corner, along the beach area, you can see some of the debris piles I mentioned, as well as a main adit or portal where impacted water is discharged from underground mine workings. This photo was taken during a summer drilling characterization activity. So you can see a temporary summer drilling camp that is located as well. This lower area closer to the shoreline is referred to the lower bench. There are 3 different topographic levels of the site: the lower bench, and then the middle bench, and then the island continues to increase in grade, and there's an upper bench that is kind of to the right outside of the frame of the photo. What's also really visible in this photo, looking at the upper right, is the Blackbird waste rock pile. You can see that orange color indicative of waste rock from the historical mining operations. And then you can see in this photo really clearly the roads that were constructed with waste rock in the 1970s. And also kind of hidden in the trees, but I have another photo. You can see a 1 million gallon heavy oil tank that was associated with this historical operations. And in the bottom, finally, the tram dump. This is another large existing waste rock pile. This graphic provides a little bit of a different way to look at the site and highlight the site cleanup plan that is currently in development with DEC. So in this graphic, you can again get a sense of those 3 topographic benches, lower, middle, and upper. And in purple, it indicates the major tributary within the area, Copper Creek, that the headwaters of Copper Creek discharge into the middle drainage area or middle bench and into Mine Lake, where that water becomes exposed to the waste rock that is a source of metals and discharges out that main adit. The number 2 highlights waste rock piles and the roads that were constructed with waste rock that you could see in that previous photo. Number 3 is where we have that large above ground storage tank and areas of hydrocarbon impacts to soil. And then finally, the number 4s provide a sense of the adit or portal discharges that are present. And over on the right, kind of those blue callouts, the conceptual cleanup plan is to manage the waste rock, the beach tailings shown in orange by this lower number 2, and metal impacted soil and creek sediment. And by manage, I mean that we'll be working to consolidate all of that source material into on-site repositories so that metals can no longer leach from the waste rock and impacted soils and contribute metals to surface water or groundwater. Part of the cleanup is also to manage the debris that is on site, and you can see that in a couple upcoming photos, removing that off-site or putting some of the debris into the on-site repository. excavate and manage or clean up the hydrocarbon impacted soil, make sure that we can safely close existing mine openings, openings referring to adits, shafts, and portals, preventing human exposures and any incidents. And then importantly, following implementation of that excavation and removal of the source materials, we'll be able to revegetate and restore the areas of impact and what we've used to set up and implement construction. And then once the cleanup is done, we'll work with the state to implement institutional controls so that water and land is used in a way that is consistent with the cleanup, and then perform long-term water quality monitoring to track the improvements in water quality over time. I mentioned the debris piles, some of which you could see in the earlier photo, but in the upper right, it's a good example of the debris piles that are mixed with that orange waste rock, many of which are visual or visible from the shoreline of Latouche Passage and Prince William Sound. And then the lower photo on the right, that's another angle or presentation of the tram dump waste rock pile. So the major benefit of the cleanup is to remediate the environmental impacts that were caused by historical mining. We also want to restore the areas that we may temporarily disturb during the construction of the cleanup action. And then removing that waste rock material, impacted soils that are a source of metals will provide a long-term ecological benefit or uplift to the wetlands, water bodies, and groundwater across the site. There will also be a visual improvement from consolidating and removing the debris and waste rock. And we see that as not just benefiting the landowners that seasonally are on site, but also the public and the residents of Prince William Sound. And then finally, we're planning for the site revegetation or reclamation informed by key stakeholder coordination and also the studies that have been conducted the past few years, including a wetlands delineation and a biodiversity study. And I mentioned we wanted to share out the project timeline. In 2014, DEC identified the site as impacted and contaminated, and also landowners, including Rio Tinto. Since that time, starting in 2016, and even going through this upcoming summer in 2024, Rio Tinto is continuing to perform field work and conduct assessments of the contamination on site. In the last few years, Rio Tinto has also been acquiring some of the mine impacted parcels of land to make sure that we can implement the cleanup and remove those source materials. And then right now in 2024, we're working on developing the site cleanup plan, targeting submittal of a draft to DEC later this year, and then hope to be working with DEC to finalize that site cleanup plan in 2025. We do anticipate there may be some additional field studies in 25 and 2026 to help further refine that cleanup design. And then we'll be working with the state and federal regulatory agencies for permitting cleanup construction in 26 and looking to implement construction in 27 or shortly after. And what's important about this timeline is that later this year in 2024, and then also in 2026, as part of permitting, we'll have the opportunity to have public comment periods and hear back and provide engagement for the public and stakeholders. And then when we refer to construction taking about 3 years or an anticipated 3 years, that's 3 summer seasons, just recognizing the seasonality and focus duration when construction can be performed. And then lastly, one of our key goals is to make sure that throughout this process, and as we look ahead into the cleanup plan design and permitting, we can provide opportunities for engagement with Chiniga, with the Chiniga village just across Latouche Passage, but also landowners and other stakeholders. And that's it for today. Thank you for letting us share out on the project, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jessi. We probably have time for one, maybe two questions. Look to Ellen. Is there anything coming on from our online audience? Okay. Does anybody in the room have a question for Jessi? Excellent. Thank you, Jessi. That was a great presentation.